Metalhead wasn't always Metalhead. So who is this Cobra anti-tank specialist? Well, most of his story is unknown. There's a surprising amount we do know about him. So let's talk about him. But before we do, let me say thank you for watching JLS Comics, whether you've been with me for a while or it's your first time here. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe and share it so you and your friends don't miss the content that I upload each and every week just like this. Let's get back to the story. The man who would come to be known as Metalhead was born as Stuart Finley and raised in Annapolis, Maryland. According to the Deke series, he went to the same high school as Gridiron. He was the mascot for the football team. And growing up in the Northeast, Finley developed an affinity for other sports, namely winter sports. In fact, he's noted as a hockey fight analyst, and he also enjoys skiing on the slopes of New Hampshire, where he's known for cutting off other skiers and shooting at chairlifts and being just plain mean. At some point, Finley allegedly became a member of the Susugar martial arts clan, where he learned a lot of fighting skills, and he became an international terrorist and developed a near obsession with guided and ballistic weaponry. It was this that drew the interest of Destro, where he was recruited into Destro's inner circle, becoming a leader of Destro's Iron Grenadiers. In addition to being a spy for Destro, Metalhead is also the leader of the Iron Grenadiers' Air Assault Squadron. He's actually noted as the Air Marshal for Destro's army. Now with Destro and under the Mars Industries umbrella, Finley underwent procedures in bioweapons application testing, which gave him cybernetic enhancements that allowed him to tap into those air assault vehicles and really become extremely lethal with them. He has bioprocessors in his head and an electromagnetic shunt in his brain that allows him to tap into the Mars Industries cloud computer network to access all manner of tactical and informational databases, sort of like Neo learning Kung Fu in the Matrix. He also had a brain-integrated targeting sight implanted in the optical nerve of his left eye. He just has to look at an object for range, windage, elevation, and other targeting data, and when he yells bang, the voice-activated firing mechanism unleashes his precision laser-guided arsenal right on his target. He works closely with Destro, the Ukrainian Iron Grenadiers general named General Mayhem. He's so obsessed with ballistics that, as Action Force describes it, that even when he sits down for dinner, he prepares for battle. He tests his visual acquisition sensors by locking onto the mashed potatoes as they're passed from one side of the table to the other. He calculates wind deflection by observing how the steam rises off the meatloaf, and he measures the diameter of green beans, seeing them as micro-targets. That's, I guess, a new way to look at dinner. Metalhead's first appearance in comic books is with 1991's issue 114 of Larry Hama's A Real American Hero comic book series, as the Battle of Benzine raged in Benzine City in the emirate of, well, Benzine. An armored column of a pulverizer, a hammer, and a raider rolled into town and ran into this one-man anti-tank soldier known as Metalhead. Metalhead's the name and tank bustin's the game, he yelled at them, sticking his tongue out in mockery. Metalhead was able to shoot and scoot around the slower-moving Joe vehicles, taking out the pulverizer first. They went around an anti-tank trap and into a square full of steel-reinforced concrete called Dragon's Teeth. That's when Metalhead popped out of the ground from a manhole and took out the hammer, nearly killing Rock and Roll Dusty and Salvo in the process. Metalhead then popped out of another manhole and ran down an alley, the Raider close behind, but as Admiral Akbar would say, it's a trap, and so it was. Metalhead blew up a building and collapsed it right onto the Raider, and as it climbed out of the rubble, he unleashed a whole barrage of anti-tank missiles right at the Raider, knocking out its tracks, rendering it immobile, and trapping the Joes inside because the canopy wouldn't open. Then, just as Metalhead lined up for the kill shot, Rock and Roll showed up and fired his handheld mini Gatling machine guns. It forced Metalhead behind a sandbag wall as Salvo then stepped in and unloaded his shoulder-launched missiles right at Metalhead's position. Then Dusty ran in and his weapons blazing too, and just as they were probably going to shoot each other dead, the call came in for a ceasefire. An interesting note in this issue is that his equipment is not made by Mars Industries yet. Here, his biointegrated targeting system is made by Stark Incorporated, most likely a subsidiary or somehow part of Stark Industries, the company owned by Tony Stark, and which develops the tech for Iron Man, fitting since both are at this time made by Marvel Comics. In issue 116, Metalhead went back to Scotland, to Castle Destro, where he reveals that he's been working undercover as a spy for Destro. He came back to warn Destro that Cobra Commander was planning an operation against the semi-retired Destro, and Destro feigned dismissal of the plan, although he knew about it, and he was ready. And that's the last time we saw Metalhead in comic books until the Devil's Due run, where Metalhead was shown as still with Destro and still with the Iron Grenadiers, as they and Cobra fought against Serpentor. In issue 25 of that series, Metalhead was wounded in battle after Serpentor ordered an EMP weapon to be deployed. Guess it took out some of the processing in his head. He's still out there in the comic book universe, probably still undercover and still conducting off-panel operations for Destro with the Iron Grenadiers. Recently, Cobra Commander and Laura 343 have Sean Collins captured, part of their snake hunt, and so all the Joes and even Destro are converging on Springfield for a massive showdown. So who knows, we may see Metalhead again pretty soon, as many Joes are returning from the dead and from obscurity once more. Because of the timing of his debut, Metalhead was not in either season of the Sunbow series. Instead, Metalhead debuted when the show was picked up by Deke, which was his most prevalent part of the franchise, as he was a prominent part of Deke's Season 1 and Season 2. He was voiced by Gary Chalk, the voice of Road Pig, Pathfinder, and Shockwave, along with Man-at-Arms for 2002's He-Man, Optimus Prime from Transformers, Armada, later Optimus Primal. He was Sky Marshal Wade from Voltron Force. Gary played Colonel Chekhov in, no, not Star Trek, in Stargate SG-1, and a captain in 2017's Power Rangers movie that will pretend never happened, but here I go, digressing again. In the very first Deke episode, called United We Stand, he's out in the woods, firing on a Joe armored column, yelling bang, bang, and sounding like Biff from Back to the Future. He's a raving lunatic here, yelling bang even when his tubes are empty, and he had to be dragged away by Nagahide so he'd stop yelling bang. He was there with Cobra Commander at the secret lair in the jungle that Ambush destroyed, and he was actually about to shoot Salvo at one point with a rocket from 5 feet away when Cobra said, "No, you mental midget." In Granny Dearest, a giant Sergeant Slaughter billboard dropped on his head as he and his Dreadnought friend were spying on Joe movements in Chicago. He ran into his grandmother, calls her Granny, at a construction site, and it was revealed that she was in the Resistance in World War II, becoming the first woman colonel in the European Defense Force. She knows how to fight, and she has a few of her own opinions on strategy and tactics that she is not shy about sharing either. In Victory at Volcania, Metalhead was on a Cobra Rage attacking Club Joe, the Joe's R&R facility. And in D-Day at Alcatraz, Metalhead surprised the Joes as he was dressed up as Mr. Laplander, a resident of the snowy area where they were looking for a Cobra base. He surrendered along with Cobra Commander and Destro and taken to Alcatraz for imprisonment. In Long Live Rock and Roll, Metalhead met up with a rock musician named Billy Blaster, eventually taking his place and rocking out with the axe. In Cobra World, he showed up with Cobra Commander to take over a theme park called not Magic Kingdom, but Magic World. The episode called Metalhead's Reunion is the one that revealed that he and Gridiron went to the same school. He was even called Metalhead back then, a goofball that was the school's football team mascot, as I mentioned earlier. He showed up at the high school reunion on the yacht, and his granny made an appearance again. They pulled up in a stretch hearse instead of a limo. And the final episode that Deke did was called The Legend of Metalhead. It's basically a recap of the series from Metalhead's perspective, so it's all flashbacks about things that he did. Metalhead, the walking anti-tank weapons action figure, hit toy store and toy aisle shelves in 1990, laden with a personal, portable, multiple launch rocket system. His action figure debuted in the commercial along with Laser Viper and Range Vipers as well. There were also some Joes in the commercial that Sergeant Slaughter introduced, Metalhead's Counter and Salvo being one of them. He came with his high-explosive missile backpack rack, a helmet, and his quote-unquote hip swivel holster tubes, and the Fun School version didn't have the backpack missiles, but instead came with the material to make grenades. And in France, a couple different versions say he is Visor, meaning viewfinder, and proclaiming on one of the cards, "The guns really shoot," and the other one, "Launcher fires glider." He came with this gold and orange spring-loaded rack and tripod system called the Spring-Loaded Flying Surveillance Weapon Launcher that would shoot an orange and blue glider in the sky. So pretty different than what we got here. But he's also using Cobra Commander's gun accessory here. Quite the variant. In 1994, a second Metalhead was released in the Battle Corps line where his weapons were all purple. It was in 1995 that Matt Hurley came out, part of G.I. Joe Extreme, with the codename Metalhead, although he had no hyphen. Completely different character. In 2005, Metalhead was part of the Joe Convention box set, and 10 years after that, he was again part of a G.I. Joe Convention box set, this time Tiger Force versus Iron Grenadiers. So who knows where Metalhead will show up next, perhaps in the Snake Hunt, perhaps an action figure for the classified line, we don't know. But when we do, we'll be sure to tell you about it. So until then, that's a wrap on this one, my friends. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, turn on your notifications, as I always say, so you can be one of the first to know when I upload videos just like this each and every week. I'm Jesse, this is JLS Comics, and I'll see you soon.